I started this podcast because I'm fascinated by how we get better at bridge, how we reach that next level. I'm talking with expert players about how they got where they are and what they do to continue honing their skills, to less experienced players about what they're doing to improve their game, and to experts in fields outside of bridge, like learning and expertise. If you're looking to level up your game, check out my classes on Learn Bridge Online. Mondays are about the expert thought process, and Thursdays are about declare or play. You can attend the classes live or you can watch the recorded replay. I'm looking forward to leveling up together. All right, I'm here today with Samantha Punch. Thank you so much for joining us, Samantha.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Good to see you.
All right, let me start. How did you learn bridge?
It was to fill the gap when I finished my PhD. So I was quite a late learner. So I was nearly 30 and I'd been finishing my PhD while I was working full time. So I just found myself with lots of spare time and I decided that, I'd take up a new hobby to fill the gap. And then it became a huge monster, bigger than the PhD ever was.
Tell us about your research and your academic career.
So about 10 years ago, I decided that as I'm a sociologist, I could actually apply some of my skills to doing bridge research, because my previous research was on childhood and youth. And I'd kind of got a bit stale on that front and decided I needed a change. But initially, it just started out as me really interviewing my bridge heroes. So I wanted to interview world-class players, a bit like kind of what you're doing now, to pick their brains and get their insights about what it's like to be one of the best players in the world and how they got that good and how they get the best out of themselves and their partners and their teammates and how they play under pressure and dealing with emotions and mistakes and all these kinds of things that I think you're interested in. Basically, I wanted to talk to them about all the non-technical human aspects of the game. And I was indulging myself initially just as a sort of hobby on the side of work. And I thought eventually it would be my retirement project and I'd put all the interviews together and write a book. But then kind of COVID hit and I had time on my hands. So I thought, well, might as well do the book now. So I chose 25 of my favorite interviews and edited them and put them together as a book. And around the same time, just before COVID, I started to move my research area to more officially to look at bridge.
What was your university's reaction when you were like, I'm going to just study bridge now?
Well, I was very lucky. Our head of department was really supportive. She got the kind of healthy aging aspect of it, the fact that it feeds into community building, it's good for mental health and brain fitness. So she got those kinds of social connection aspects of the game. And I suppose because I'd been at Sterling for over 20 years by then, there was a kind of element of trust as well, that I kind of knew what I was going to do and that, I wasn't just doing it for a laugh. I was going to do it seriously.
All right. So what have you learned? What makes someone good at bridge?
So, I have focused more on the non-technical human aspects. So I suppose that's probably what I'll end up talking about more today, because that's what the research has delved into. I used to think that concentration was something quite easy, and that we should all just be able to do it because it's not hard. It's maybe hard to do some technical plays in bridge, and to sort of combine all your chances and get the best line. But concentration was just about applying yourself. But time and time again, these top players were saying that they felt that concentration and focus was something that, marked out the world-class players from the tier below. And I suppose when I started to think about it, it's kind of everything that goes with concentration and focus. It's not maybe as easy as it sounds, particularly if you're having to do it for 2 weeks long, playing several matches a day. It's about, how you conserve energy, how you self-motivate yourself as well to really focus. And it's discipline, it's self-discipline to do that, to double check what you're doing, to get into really good bridge habits. Just making sure that, you're not being lazy in any aspect of the game, whether that's knowing your system inside and out, or whether that's double checking before you do something, or whether it's stopping yourself pulling the wrong card or missorting your hand. So I think discipline covers a whole spectrum of things as well. And that's kind of linked to the concentration and focus aspects. And I suppose there is a slight difference between those two. Concentration is when you're kind of really focusing all your energy and thinking intensely about something. And focus is when you're kind of directing that energy and that attention to a single point. And so that's where the discipline comes in and not being distracted. And I think some of the top players in the world are just better at that than the rest of us.
And why are they better at it? Is it something they have worked on, or is it something innate?
I'm a sociologist, so I think there's very little that's innate. I mean, I do agree that perhaps in relation to about a dozen players in the world, there's maybe some innate kind of thing in there. But for the rest of us, and that's a lot of the rest of us, it's about deliberate practice. So it's about mindful practice, and it's about hours and hours of practice. I mean, the people that I interviewed, like David Gold, Zia, they said, it's no coincidence they got good. They did all-nighters day after day after day. They played thousands of hands. And most of us don't apply ourselves in that way. We like to play, but we don't play that much. We don't play it at the exclusion of everything else, or we're not able to. I mean, by the time I learned, when I was nearly 30, I just got my first job. I just finished my PhD and I was working. So I didn't have the luxury to play bridge day in, day out, as some people did when they were, children or at university. So I don't think that plays a big part in it as well, as to how much you do dedicate yourself. I think it's a lot about dedication and commitment as well, and the desire. So it's not just enough wanting it. You've got to really desire it. And that desire has got to translate into self-motivation and self-discipline. And there's no quick fix. And a lot of that is hard work. There's no shortcuts. You've got to put the hours in, and you've got to push yourself, and you've got to have that hunger and drive.
So playing is obviously important, but is how you play, how you practice, does that matter? Or is it just hours at the table?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not just mindless practice. You've got to be kind of mindful of what you're doing and be concentrated. There's no point, even if you go down the club, there's no point in just throwing cards about. At the beginning you're slow, you're not good at it, and you've got to practice to get your routine quicker, to get the way of doing it more efficient. And it takes a long time. You can't just suddenly switch that on and switch that off. And I think that's another thing that the world-class players have, is that ability to count or to pip watch and to visualize does come a lot quicker to them, whether that's because of practice or whether because they've done it as a child. So I think one of my disadvantages, because I learned when I was nearly 30, I think I did miss some of that kind of instinctive aspect of the game. So it was a bit more labored learning for me. So I don't know if you've come across Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow.
I'm familiar with that one.
I found that quite interesting. I read it a few years ago now, but he talks about there's two different modes of thought. And I thought this could really apply in a bridge context, that one mode of thought is fast, where it's instinctive, almost emotional. And the other is much more slower, more deliberate and more logical. And I think in bridge playing, we often go through thinking fast or thinking slow. And some players tend to be more in one camp rather than the other. So I'm definitely a thinking slow player. And I think that's partly because I didn't learn as a child. So I don't have the kind of instinctive aspect. And in a way, that can be a good thing, because it means sometimes the really top players, what they do is they do play too quickly and they miss something because they're just playing too much on kind of autopilot and instinct. But a lot of them recognize when they need to switch between thinking fast and thinking slow. I don't think they think about it like that, but I think that's part of their bridge logic when they're at the table. They know when they can be in thinking fast mode and conserve a lot of energy and rely on their instincts. And then they know when to switch to that more deliberate logical thinking and thinking slow and take their time, because this is a really difficult problem. And their analysis and putting together all the bits of the puzzle is much quicker than the rest of us, and they're less likely to forget a really important piece of the jigsaw puzzle. I think all of us are aware of what all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are, but sometimes we just miss one vital piece. You just forgot that hand had passed, or they'd led that suit instead of, something small that, you're so busy piecing together everything else that you take your eye off the ball of one piece of information that you do know, but you forget to access. And I think that's what, again, the top layer of players, and this isn't just the world-class players, I suppose this is the top layer of the top players as well. This is the kind of things that they do.
Yeah, I'm definitely the fast thinker, but one of the things that holds me back is I think I don't switch to that slow thinking often enough. How does one recognize this is the time I need to turn it on?
I guess that's experience as well, isn't it? And that's part of the experience of the very best players. They've been there so many times before. They kind of know the warning signs of when they've got to do that. But I think there's also a level of, they are just Yeah, they are thinking very fast, and they can go through all these thought processes a lot quicker than the rest of us. And I think partly as well is to do with the fact that some of them are full-time pros and a lot of us are amateurs, have other jobs and things. So their bridge fitness is so much better. So I like to be bridge ready, but I wouldn't say I'm bridge fit because I work full time. So I'm automatically at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of turning up to a serious tournament. Whereas, if you're a full-time professional, you can afford to be bridge fit and not just bridge ready.
So what does bridge ready look like for you? What do you do to get ready for a tournament?
There is a difference for me between when I'm playing for Scotland and representing my country versus when I'm playing in a serious event that I want to do well in, but I don't think I'm necessarily going to win. When I'm playing for Scotland, I'm always taking it extremely seriously. When I'm playing in other serious events, I'm often there to learn and to gain experience. So, for example, going to an NABC, I don't expect to win that. But I'd like to do well and I like to take it seriously, but I'm not being paid. I'm paying my own expenses. So it's also a holiday. So there's certain things that I'll do different there. So for example, in an NABC or in an open European event or a World Bridge Federation open event, when I'm not playing for Scotland, I'll be a bit more relaxed. I will do some of the same things beforehand, but when I'm there, I'll be different in the sense that I'll use it as a learning opportunity and I'll discuss hands a lot at the end of the day. And, I'll be a bit social as well. But when I'm playing for Scotland and I'm taking it super seriously, then I'll take several days off work beforehand to make sure I get out of the work zone and try and get myself into the bridge zone and into kind of a right positive mindset, ready for bridge and not stressed by work or thinking and distracted by other things. I'll use those couple of days maybe to read a bridge book, to read through some suit combinations, to focus on my system. I'll do slow reading through my system, then fast reading through the highlighted bits, and then I'll focus just before the event just on my reminder sheet to make sure the system's sorted. But I'll just kind of get my head into bridge and thinking about bridge. And then when I'm playing in a very serious event, I will try and be disciplined and get to bed early and do some exercise when I'm there as well to kind of switch off. And I will avoid all discussion of hands. When I'm playing for Scotland, I don't want to learn. I'm not there to learn. I'm there to play my best bridge and conserve energy. And I want to be playing as well at the end of an event as I am at the start of an event. And I see way too many people at events that they're trying to win, that they're watching on view graph, they're discussing the hands, they're discussing hands in between matches, they're discussing hands at the end of the day. You play all the hands twice. Of course you're going to be tired. And then I see them at the end of the event, at the end of a week or 10 days of bridge, they're tired. But if you've been looking after yourself and not doing any of that stuff and just concentrating on playing your best game and not learning, the learning can come afterwards. Sometimes I've had a mentor who would look through my hands at an event like that when I've played for Scotland, and they'll go through them and they'll give me a written analysis of all my chucks and everything they think I did wrong. And then we'll also discuss it. So there's plenty of time to learn from all the hands, but I make sure that that's after the event rather than during.
You mentioned exercising. What is exercise and diet? Do you drink it all at these tournaments?
Yeah, I think the physical preparations are really important if you want to get the best out of yourself. We've written a paper actually on the physicality of bridge and what top players have said about what they do to prepare. I mean, obviously not all of them do this, but I do think it makes a difference of some level of physical fitness before you start, so that particularly if you're playing in a 2-week long event, you need the stamina and you need the resilience, and it helps the focus and concentration. For me, I mean, during the event itself, that might be going for a swim, going for a walk, maybe going for a swim and then a sauna afterwards to try and chill out and just clear your head of all the stuff so that you've got a clear thinking head. And trying to cut right down the drink. When I'm playing for Scotland in a very long event, I'll try and keep that to absolute minimal, and I'll try and get to bed by certainly 10 or 11 at night, which for me is very early. And I won't worry either. I don't stress if I don't sleep. As long as I'm resting, I'm still resting, that's okay. And I know as well that I can perform and play bridge on little sleep because the adrenaline will kick in and that will help my sharpness and focus. Obviously, for a weekend, that's fine. If it's a 2-week long event, then you do need some decent sleep at some point.
Do you do your swim before the set in the morning?
No, I'm not a morning person. No, I'll do it afterwards. Yeah. So if I'm playing for Scotland and I'm sitting out, then I will try and do something like that when in the break. So I'll try and just do something physical. And also that's to counteract the sitting. There's too much sitting and I have a bad back as well. So I try and do something physical in terms of movement. But I do feel that helps. That helps keep your your brain a bit fresher and helps to kind of get rid of bridge stuff and to sort of move on from previous matches and concentrate on the next one.
So this paper that you were just alluding to, what was the conclusion about, like, during the tournament and between tournaments? Like, what should we be doing?
Yeah, I mean, this paper sort of was actually kind of picking up on the sort of physical aspects of mind sports. And for example, I remember Andrew Robson, talking about the importance of sleep. And he even linked it to Zia's 3 heats, about Zia's 3 heats. So when he was playing in particular with Tony Forrester, they were a top British pair. And he would ask Tony in the morning, have you had a good night's sleep? And if Tony had said, yeah, he'd slept great, he would then treat him at the table as if they were both in heat 1. They're both in heat 1. They're both on their game. He can do tricky things in defense, and he knows Tony will pick up on that and he will get it because he's going to be sharp. But if Tony says no, he's had a dreadful night's sleep, he'll be like, right, okay, I'm treating him as though he's in heat 3 and I'm going to help him, and I'm not going to put him under pressure to do something tricky in defense. I'll just go out of my way to keep it simple and make it easier. I mean, keeping it simple is still at Robson and Forrester's level, so it's not really very simple at all. But I thought it was interesting that for him, sleep was that important, that he likes to know how well his partner slept, and that will affect how he defends with them, or the pressure perhaps he puts them under in the bidding.
That's fascinating. So what are your recommendations for someone who's looking to maximize their game? Like, should I join a gym? Should I be at the gym between sessions at a bridge tournament? Like, what's the best physical way to maximize my potential?
I think a lot of these answers are kind of contingent. It's about knowing yourself. It's self-awareness, it's partnership awareness, and it's team awareness. So you've got to kind of reflect on those 3 things. But in terms of self-awareness, it's knowing what works for you, what enables you to rest and relax in between matches so that you're ready to play, what makes you ready to play, what enables you to get the best out of yourself, what enables you to feel fitter mentally, and I think some sort of physical exercise, but that could be any, that depends what your favorite thing is to do. I don't think you necessarily have to join a gym if you hate gyms. Find something that you enjoy doing.
For me, it's like an athlete in the off season. You have to be ready when the season starts.
Yeah, and if you think about any other kind of top athletes and any other kind of sport training regimes, compare them to the bridge training regimes, and it's light and day. So
and that's what I'm trying to figure out this year with this project, is like, I think that there's low-hanging fruit here, that as a group we're not doing all that we can. We're not treating it the way a football player, baseball player, whatever does. And if you think of us as athletes, which I think is a stretch, but it's a serious endeavor, why aren't we putting that time and effort in?
Getting the body moving and clearing the brain and making sure you come to the table with a clear thinking head that's not cluttered with other stuff is important. And that sort of self-awareness is about, what you need to get the best out of yourself, but what your partner needs and what you can do to help your partner get the best out of themselves, and also what your teammates need. And it's about really trying to focus on maximizing everyone's strengths and minimizing the weaknesses. You can't get rid of the weaknesses, but you can try and minimize them. So and I think that awareness can happen at all kinds of levels of the game, around mistakes, around emotions. I've done like 60 interviews now over the years with, this is either world-class players or top players. They talk about, really understanding, like even something like with mistakes are so wrapped up with emotions, and it's about, how we reflect on mistakes, what mistakes irritate us most, what mistakes your partner does that irritates you more, and how do you cope with that? Do you have conversations about how to minimize certain types of mistakes? And it's about how you react to the mistakes and then the emotions that are triggered because of the mistake. So for example, I think most people tend to get more upset when the mistake they make is something that is one of their strengths. But if it's your weakness, you don't mind so much. So if you know you're rubbish at knowing the system, or you're lazy at learning the system, then you won't be hard on yourself when you forget it, because you almost expect to forget it. But if you think that you're an amazing declarer player and you stuff up an easy line in the declarer play contract, then you're going to be quite cross with yourself. And so I suppose it's also recognizing then those danger zones of when you're going to be a bit more vulnerable to have a kind of spike in emotion, whether that's something you've done, something your partner's done, or even possibly something your teammates have done. And it's understanding what your partner needs when that happens and how you should or shouldn't react and how you can help them and vice versa.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard from a lot of people is overcoming adversity and, like how you react at the table to disasters, and everyone cites Bob Hammond as the best at this ever. How does one work on that skill? Because it seems to be one that differentiates some of the best players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's another bridge skill like any other that needs to be practiced. And you need to be conscious of it. So, I mean, some people do go to sports psychologists, and they can help you with the process of identifying your weaker spots. Some people are more self-reflexive than others, so some people can do it for themselves. Sometimes it actually helps to discuss with someone else to actually really tease out what your danger zones are, and then what you can do about them. And then they can offer techniques, things that you can practice to help you deal with these sorts of situations. Or if you don't want to go to the effort of paying for a sports psychologist, or you don't know one that can help you, then you can do some of that for yourself. And again, it's just that self-awareness thing of being aware of how you react when something bad goes wrong, and how can you minimize that reaction, rather than, you're not going to completely shed it totally, and certainly not quickly. You might do eventually. I mean, even Bob Hammond himself, when I interviewed him, he said it took him a good 10-20 years to get to that state of mental toughness. He wasn't always like that. We always refer to him as being, the great Bob Hammond who's got this amazing mental resilience. But right at the beginning, the first 10-20 years, no, he struggled with that. He wasn't a great partner, and he had to teach himself to do that. So, it's a learned process, but you've got to practice, and you need energy to do that as well. When amateurs like myself, when we're playing, it's hard because you're coming to the tournament tired. You're coming from work and you're tired, and you've got limited amount of energy, and all your energy goes into the technical stuff of the game. So sometimes I don't have enough to play well and be a nice partner. Sometimes I just don't have enough energy to do both. And unfortunately, then sometimes that's when I'm not so well behaved as a partner, because it takes mental energy to be mentally tough. And that's taking away then your energy from, the technical problem in front of you. And that's why I guess conserving energy is such an important thing, because you need to figure out how you're going to manage those emotional highs and lows.
How much does confidence play in these situations?
A big part, yeah. I mean, I think certainly like mistakes and emotions are tied up together, and in turn they have an impact on confidence, particularly if you're not dealing with them very well. That can dent your confidence. And as you've seen in bridge, I mean, confidence and the confidence momentum at the bridge table can switch so quickly. It's like when you watch a tennis match, it's the same thing. You can almost physically see it. If you're watching a tennis match and a player's on form and they're doing well, and then suddenly they go on a bad series of points, you can physically see almost a difference in their physicality, and that's their confidence starting to ebb away. You can see the same thing at the bridge table. If someone's just gone for 1100, there's a bit of a slump, there's a bit of an uplift from their opponent. There's physical signs of this that are showing that your confidence is being either dented or uplifted in that moment.
Yeah, that physicality you talked about, that you just feel yourself slumping. If you're aware of that and counter the physicality, does that affect your confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. When these things happen, you can do physical things like, make sure both your feet are flat on the floor, make sure you're sitting upright, take big, deep breaths so that you're calming down, and that you're kind of trying to uplift yourself as well, that your physical posture is reflecting, is at least projecting maybe what you're not feeling, but then that will help you feel more positive. Yeah, but it's hard. That's one of the things about bridge. You have to learn to be humiliated, and you have to be willing to be humiliated. Some people can't cope with that. We all have to look stupid at times in order to get better and to get stronger. But some people find that hard to deal with. So it's that mental resilience is really important, of figuring out how you're going to deal with those moments.
It seems to me that one of the huge differences is, a normal player will tend to have one, maybe two boards a set where they just do something stupid, and the really good players, I mean, it occasionally happens, but it's so much less frequent. And so that consistency, I think, is one of the things I'm aiming for, and it's elusive. And I'm trying to figure out what is consistency and how do I get it?
I mean, part of that is kind of getting good bridge hygiene. It's kind of developing really good thinking habits and thinking about the right thing at the right time. And I think, again, that's what the world-class players are really good at, recognizing what's the right thing to concentrate on this particular hand. So it's the right thing at the right time and developing the recognition of what's required. But partly, in order to do that, you've got to have really good thinking routines at the table. And your thinking routines have got to be kind of quick as well. And one thing I did, certainly when I was learning, was I asked people about their thought processes, because that's something that we don't often share. Like what goes on in people's minds and what their thinking habits are when dummy hits, for example, whether you're in defence or whether you're declarer. I think it's really interesting asking top players what goes through their mind and what order do they do things in, and how do they do them, and how have they made that more efficient over time to enable them not to miss something. That then results in us being less consistent and them being more consistent, because they're less likely to overlook things that we are. And that's part of the consistency. The consistency is not missing something and not being lazy and being disciplined. And we love playing and discussing, but the other stuff, some of the other really hard stuff, we're a bit lazy about. So yeah, I think there's more we could do on that front.
Yeah. So part of being lazy is at the table, and part of being lazy is away from the table. So if my goal is to not be lazy and I want to work on this skill, what should I be doing?
Okay, so away from the table, there's a lot of things you could be doing. And I think you should be doing a mixture of things to keep your interest up, because you have got to keep your self-motivation up. Otherwise, it could wane very quickly. So I think you want some things that you really enjoy doing. You'll have strengths. You'll know what your strengths are, and you'll know what you enjoy, how you enjoy practicing. Like, I love reading books, but particularly on declarer play. I don't like reading on defence. I find defence in reading is too dry. I prefer to discuss that with people after playing hands. So I think it's forcing yourself to do some of the things that you don't like doing. So for me, that would be forcing myself to read some of those hard defence books that, I gave up on a while ago and need to go back to them. I think it's doing a mixture of playing and having someone watch you play, and then having them go through board by board everything that they think you've done, and that's all aspects of the game. And ideally, obviously, you want a top player to be doing that. Having someone analyze hands that you've played. Maybe you've played in an event where there is an electronic record of the hands afterwards, so that they can go through them, so they're not actually having to watch you in real time. They can just go through records on BBO or whatever. Doing things like maybe doing some sports psychology things and focusing on those non-technical aspects, because I think that could improve people's games. I think it was Brian Senior that improving your concentration and focus consistently would up people's game more than any other aspect. And that's not a hard thing to deal with, really. You've got to apply yourself and you've got to practice it. But if you put in as much time trying to improve your concentration and focus as your squeeze play, do you know what I mean? Just think how much your concentration and focus could improve. I think it's also about trying to get hold of training materials, and there's loads available these days, and do them individually. Like things like, it could be like, preempting style, for example. So you have a whole list of preempts, 50 preempts, and you say what you would open in different positions, different vulnerability. Then you say what you think your partner would do. And then you get your partner to do the same, and then you compare. And that's quite interesting. I think these are quite interesting drills when you both do them, but you both also say what you think the other one would do. And then that helps you see whether your styles are sort of compatible, where you might need to compromise. But it also helps you really know each other's playing preferences in different positions and vulnerabilities and things. And you can do that with opening leads. You can do that with even just as simple as overcalls, or high level bidding or competitive bidding.
So I know that I and everybody needs work both on the technical bridge stuff and also the mental stuff, the coming to the table, getting the most out of your talent, whatever. If you were helping me design my training, how would you split the training for those two things? What would it look like?
So obviously, in terms of the technical stuff, there's a lot, because you've got leads, you've got play, you've got defense, you've got bidding, you've got constructive bidding, competitive bidding, high level bidding. So there's a lot of technical stuff and lots of different aspects of that you're going to want to look at all of those areas to see if all of them you can go up a notch, then that's going to be good for your game. So maybe that takes up 2/3 of your week. But I would say the other third, you should be maybe thinking about some of these. So they're easy to say and not so easy to do if you haven't practiced them. But if you practice them, then I think you could up your concentration levels, your focus. You already recognize that you maybe think too fast sometimes, and you need to go into the thinking slow, and you need to know when to recognize that. Maybe there's things that you could do about discipline that would help your consistency. So I think maybe reflection on you and your partner and how you and your partner get on. Does your partner, by the way, it's Greg, isn't it? Does he want to level up?
Yes, he's working with me.
Okay, so that's a key part of it, is having the compatibility of the partnership that you're wanting to grow together. Because if one of you does and the other one doesn't, then that's a bit of a nightmare. A lot of the training and things we've been talking about involves your partner, whether that's the technical or the non-technical stuff. So it's having those conversations, really making sure you know what your partner's likes and dislikes are around all the non-technical as well as the technical aspects of the game. Are there certain leads that they hate you making? Equally the likes and dislikes around all this non-technical stuff we've been talking about how you cope with mistakes, about what both of you could even consider as a mistake. Different people classify different things as a mistake. And therefore that affects how you react to it emotionally, depending on whether you perceive it is a mistake or not. And you and your partner could have very different views on that. And knowing what each other's views are and talking about that, and then talking about how you might cope with some of those tricky situations. What do you do that irritates your partner and vice versa? What are the triggers? What triggers you at the table from the opposition? How can you minimize that? You can't get rid of it, but how can you minimize that and deal with it better? And how can your partner help you deal with some things that you find difficult to deal with? Some people need harsh words, some people need kind words, some people need silence.
What are some examples of things that someone else might think is a mistake, but I don't?
So an obvious one would be revoking. So, and I feel very strongly about this. Bridge is a mind game. It's a mind sport. And as we've talked about, the very top players rarely pull the wrong card. They rarely revoke. They rarely missort their hand. Why? Because they're better at the mind game aspects. They're more disciplined and they're more concentrated and more focused. These kinds of errors are just purely down to lack of discipline, focus, or concentration. And these are key elements of the game. So I don't think we should be so forgiving about them. It's like, well, when I lose my concentration and take the wrong line, you don't let me take it back. I can play the wrong card and immediately recognize, I'm now in the wrong hand at the wrong time. You're not letting me take that back. Why should you let me take it back when I lose concentration and pull the wrong card? Yeah. But, some people feel very strongly that is or isn't a mistake. I think it is a mistake like any other.
That's interesting. Yeah, I certainly don't beat myself up over a revoke the same way I do forgetting system or missing a squeeze or something like that.
But maybe you should if it costs 10 amps.
Yeah.
You've taken your eye off the ball. It's as simple as that, I'm afraid. And you're being lazy.
Yeah.
You've not double checked before you pulled that card out.
Yeah. Can practice where you're not focusing, can that actually be detrimental? Like, I play online a lot, and sometimes I'll have another browser window open, and certainly when I'm dummy, I'm doing other things, but I'm not necessarily there the way I would be playing the Spingold. Is that actually hurting my game?
I think, there's two different ways of looking at it. That you're slightly wasting a bit of your time because you're not getting the benefit out of playing. So you could be doing something more productive bridge-wise. But I don't think it's doing any harm. I think there's also another way of looking at it, and that's kind of linked to the thinking fast, thinking slow that we talked about. I think there's two different ways of reading a bridge book. You can either do it reading fast or reading slow. So I tend to read slow, and I always make sure I work out my thought processes before I turn over the page and see the solution. But I spend quite a bit of time thinking through the different thought processes. My bridge partner just reads really quickly, makes a snap decision, and then turns the page and gets the solution. But he'll read the book 3 times in the space that I'll read it once. So I'm working on my thought processes, but he's working on pattern recognition. So he's thinking just the more hands he plays and the quicker he plays them, then the more likely he's going to recognize that hand type when it comes up at the table. So his view is you just play as much as you can, and the more you play, then you get that pattern recognition. And then you're more likely to spot things and know when you've got a problem and when to take risks and that kind of thing. The other way of doing it is that it is much more slow, that you're more careful, whether that's playing online and you're not got your emails open, or, whether that's reading a book and you're reading it slowly and developing your thought processes. So again, I don't necessarily think one's right and one's wrong. I think they're just two different ways of doing it. And I think different people prefer different styles. But I think certainly with the play aspect, I think, you're not improving your game a lot by doing it the fast way or the non-deliberate way. But reading, I think there's no right or wrong. I think you can benefit from either of those approaches.
I've been changing my reading approach because I was very much just read through the thing and just skip ahead and read the answer. And, I think from that deliberate practice viewpoint, like doing it and making a decision and saying, okay, I would lead a club, and then getting that immediate feedback of you were right or you're wrong is essential.
Yeah, and I think it's worth trying different approaches as well and seeing what has better outcomes.
If I decided to hire you as my bridge guru, my training consultant, what would you put together for me? What do you think my days, my weeks should look like?
So, as I said, it's just a mixture of all the things we've talked about. I think you have to focus on all those different kind of aspects of the game, from, leading, bidding, play, defense, and all the different aspects of that, and do different drills. And some of that individually, some of that with your partner, and a lot of it you do individually and then compare together. So a lot of kind of individual work, but a lot of partnership work. And then a big chunk of the time on some of this non-technical stuff. Really think about, drawing up some kind of list of your areas of weakness on the non-technical aspects of the game and what you could do to improve those. And then just some of the other digital things, like Q bids should be daily, going through the Bridge Master series again, revisiting some of these things to make sure that some of the things that that you really know, and that you start to get much more consistent on the bread and butter, and get really competent so that you never miss one of the easy ones. I mean, if you never messed up the easy ones, I'm sure your level will go up. It's just all too easy to make an error of something that we really shouldn't be making an error of. And I think you should obviously go to very top tournaments, not just in the US. You should go to like the European Bridge League, Open tournaments, the World Bridge Federation ones. They are expensive, but you're going to get good face-to-face high-level competition. But you should also play in some easy ones. You should also go to some regionals or some sectionals just now and then to get your confidence back. Because if you're focusing purely on leveling up, it's going to be hard work, and hopefully you're going to get mentors telling you what you've done wrong and, why you're not very good and what you need to be doing to get better. And you're constantly going to be criticized. Every now and then, every couple of weeks, you need to go and do something that will boost your confidence and get your confidence levels back and realize that you can play the game after all.
You need to be the big fish in the small pond every now and then. All right, changing gears, how are things going with the research and kids? What are you learning? What's the best way to teach kids bridge?
So definitely not overteach, definitely small steps, because a lot of them haven't been exposed to cards. So, we're dealing with kids who don't even know what the suits are, let alone what trumps and a trick is. So very small steps. We've actually just translated some Norwegian videos of these cute little animated characters. They're 2 minutes long each. And what we're trying to get is school teachers to integrate that into the classroom, where the school teacher shows the 2-minute video. We've done lesson plans for them, and they get taught kids through, and they learn alongside the kids. So the school teacher's learning at the same time, and they're all learning together, but it's kind of small steps at a time. And I think one of the problems is even if we don't mean to, we overteach way too much, especially with kids. You've got to decide on one lesson, there's one theme, and you're just going to pick up on that theme, and you're only going to pick up on those errors. They can make all the other errors that they like. They can overtake their partner's king with their ace, they can do all sorts of things, as long as they're following the rules of the game and playing in the right order and the right person leads. Just let them make loads of mistakes. Let them get stuck in the wrong hand. Don't correct all these things. Just correct that 1 week's thing. If the aim of the lesson is just to learn about taking tricks, then just focus on that and don't teach them too much else. I think there's too many really well-intentioned volunteers who just try and teach too much, and that can be quite off-putting.
Yeah, you just gotta let them play.
Yeah. And fun. The emphasis on fun and play, and not trying to create bridge players. initially, I think what most of us should be doing is exposing lots of children and young people to bridge and to cards, and not worrying whether they're going to be any good or not. Just get them all enjoying it and having fun, and don't worry about the mistakes.
Do you think a realistic conversion rate is from, you have a class of 100 kids, how many are going to become tournament players?
It's low. It's definitely not more than 10%. I would have thought maybe quite a bit lower, 5%. And we don't have stats as such on this, but I don't think we should worry, because my view is you've exposed now 100 kids to bridge. And yeah, many of them might go on and do different things. They've got competing activities. They may do more physical sports. They've got jobs. They've got families. But if they've been exposed to it as kids, they're more likely to come back to it when they're older, as adults.
All right. Well, Samantha, thank you so much. Thank you for all you're doing for bridge as well, treating it as a serious subject that should be studied. And especially the stuff with the kids that you're doing now. I think having best practices and really understanding the science behind it will help us a lot.
Yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do is fill the academic gap. There's a lot of research on chess and a lot of published papers and things on chess, and bridge in comparison just didn't have the same. So we're just trying to fill that gap, and at least by starting to promote it through the academic routes, but then having sort of practical outcomes attached to some of the projects as well. We're hoping that, it can make some difference at some point.
Well, thank you, Samantha. This has been a really fascinating conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of it.
But it's been fun. So thank you.